gotta be something else.
Or how would it be if you was to doom them all again like that time you sent down the flood? I bet that would make them mind.
You know how much good the flood did?
How about cleaning up the whole mess of them and starting all over again with some new kind of animal?
And admit that I'm licked?
Oh, no, of course not, Lord.
It ain't right for me to give up trying to do something with him. Doggone mankind must be all right at the core. Or else why did I bother with him in the first place?
We get a situation where, hey, the sons of El, so the people are being carved out and the people are being assigned according to the sons of El. And we see the term Bene El all throughout the text, right? Or Bene Elohim all throughout the text. So the most important thing we got to find out to say, who are these sons of El? That the nations and the peoples are being divided, separated, and bounds are being constructed. Now we have Yahuwah Yahweh is coming on the scene, and a portion is divvied out for him, and that portion is Yaakov or Israel. Those are his people.
And then Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right away, Lord.
Go tell them to put the bolts back in the boxes. I won't be using them again for a while.
Okay, Lord.
Was you going anywhere near the big pit?
I could go.
Lean over the breech. Come in.
Sorry we so long coming, Lord, but me and Pappy, we had to take the boy over and get him a can of weighing ointment.
What's the matter, son?
Oh, they was chafing me a little, but they're fine now, Lord.
That's good. Sit down and make yourselves comfortable.
Thank you, Lord.
Men, I'm going to talk about a little scheme I've got.
Yes, Lord.
Now, I don't know if you boys know it or not, but you just about the 3 best men of one family that's come up here since I made little apples.
Thank you, Lord.
Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Yes, Lord.
You've got a great-great-great-great-grandson in the sheep business over in Midian County.
Oh, well, he got in a little trouble down in Egypt, but 'twa'n't his doing, Lord. He killed a man for abusing one of our boys in the brickworks.
You know, old King Pharaoh has all our people in bondage.
Who do you think put them there? It's all right, boys. I'm going to take them out of it. I'm going to turn over the whole land of Canaan to them. And you know who's going to lead them there?
Oh, Lord.
Your great-great-great-great-grandson. Moses, ain't it?
Yes, Lord.
Yes. I've been noticing him.
Quite a favor to the family, Lord.
In fact, you're going to perform them.
Me?
Yes, sir. You're going down into Egypt, Moses.
Egypt?
And lead my people out of bondage. To do that, I'm going to make you the best trick in the world.
Who told you you could come in here?
You old King Pharaoh?
That's me. You hear the question I ask?
My name is Moses.
Moses the Hebrew.
The Hebrew Moses?
Yes.
Put him to the sword.
Stay outside that circle.
What's the idea here?
I'm a magician, old King Pharaoh.
Put a spell on him. I got magicians too. We'll see who's got the best magic. Well, go ahead. Give him gree-gree.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, what's the matter?
I can't think of the right spell.
You mean he's even got you whipped? Oh, no, he ain't. Get him.
I got him. He got a new kind of magic. It's got electricity in it.
Well, now that makes it just a little different. So you's a magician.
Now is trying to reinstitute is the covenant of faith that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What we see now that happened at Mount Sinai after the descent of the golden calf, now we see something now that was being implemented because by all intents and purposes now, Israel was supposed to have been destroyed.
It's Moses. Something's happened to Moses.
When we came out of Egypt,
is because when we came out of Egypt and Moses went up to the mountains, what did the children of Israel do, including Aaron?
There was idol worshiper.
Agree that there were other nations with us in the wilderness.
Now,
people that weren't Israelites.
Now, I would say no, but let's go with your notion that they are. How many of them made it into the nation, into the kingdom of Israel?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
How many made it into the promised land?
How many made it into the promised land?
I've killed every last one of you. Every last one of you.
Behold, I will destroy them with the earth.
So he told Noah, I'm finished with these cats. I'm done with them. I'm going to kill them all, except for you and your family. I'm killing everybody.
By all intents and purposes now, Israel was supposed to have been destroyed.
Why did I ever make them?
And sure to get some more thunderbolts?
No, they don't do no good.
Moses is up getting the laws. We down there getting it in with a golden calf.
He said he would have destroyed them if Moses wasn't there to stand in the breach. Kind of like how Mashiach did, right? To turn away his wrath, right?
Exodus chapter 20, verse 5. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me.
Now that part right there, visiting the sins of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation.
Generations and how the Most High creates progenitors. You know, when we read about the law about third and fourth generations and how the Most High judges Israel, when we were in the wilderness 40 years, there were 3 and 4 generations that had to come to pass that died, that didn't make it into the wilderness.
Again, I'm gonna ask you. I don't know if you're understanding the question that I'm asking you. You know, nobody made it into. You know, there's a reason why they wandered for 40 years. 60. There's a reason why they wandered for 60 years, so that those generations could die off. There's only 2 men from that generation that made it in.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves.
Did y'all catch that? I'm going to read it again. Read verse 7.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves.
The Most High just made a clear distinction that he was not our God no more. He said, Moses, the people you brought, your people that you brought, when in all the other contexts, you're going to see my people that I brought out of the land of Egypt.
If you had the blood of another nation, you couldn't come in for 3 generations.
Once your DNA is altered, you are no longer God's creation.
Just that fast, he told Moses, like, look, this ain't my people.
The Most High didn't just say that. The Most High said, I'm going to kill them and I'm going to make a great nation out of you.
A dramatic turn occurs in 32:26-42. YHWH confesses, I thought to scatter them, the Israelites, and blot out the memory of them from humankind. God, however, backs away from this drastic plan and realizes that the unnamed enemy nation might misunderstand its victory over Israel and arrogantly say to itself, our hand is triumphant, it is not the Lord who did all this. Thus, God's judgment of Israel will turn to compassion when he sees their power is gone, neither bond nor free remaining. YHWH proclaims what a chastened Israel has come to know.
And if you're not part of the house, like Warren said, you're part of the 2/3. You have to abide inside of the house.
The Isar, stranger, is a man outside of the family circle of the Father's house. In Ezekiel 16:143 we the story of the foundling, Jerusalem, who was thrown out into the wilderness because of her mixed descent, but was found by YHWH, who took care of her, that is, gave her life, and later, when she became an adult, married her.
Adultery, which is going to hurt some hearts. Adultery is not a man having multiple wives.
P provides rituals of purification for all the impurities it delineates. H provides a remedy for the defilement caused by bloodshed, shedding the blood of the murderers. But H does not suggest any means to undo the defilement of the land by forbidden sexual relations. The punishment Leviticus 18 threatens for prohibited sexual relations is directed not only at the sinners, for whoever shall do any of these abominations, the persons that do them shall be cut off from among their people, but at the community as a whole, lest the land vomit you out, when you defile it, as it vomited out the nation that was before you. Unlike Leviticus 18, Leviticus 20 includes punishments with each of the forbidden sexual relations it lists. But it appears that even the proper punishments will not prevent the land from becoming defiled, with the same dire effects for the whole people. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my ordinances, and do them, that the land where I am bringing you to dwell may not vomit you out.
Okay, now let's go to King Rehoboam. King Rehoboam, who was king on the throne in Israel. 1 Kings 14:21. And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. Solomon was marrying all them heathen wives, remember?
Yeah.
He reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old, and when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name near, and his mother was Naamah and Ammonitis. So here we have a Japanese, today they would be Japanese, an Ammonite mother of Rehoboam, Solomon's wife or woman, and he was king. Not only was he in the congregation, not only was he a Judite, but he was king.
I'm really trying to understand. Like, so you're literally trying to, like, so the whole Davidic line you're saying is not Israelite. The whole line, the line of the fam.
I don't get it, man. I don't get it. Does the woman determine your pedigree? That means Rehoboam would not be an Israelite, because I believe Rehoboam's mother is an Ammonite. Rehoboam would not have been able to rule if he was an Ammonite, because the law was the only people that can be a king of your people is someone of your people.
But now, we know that Ruth, you understand, was directly related to King David and Solomon, correct?
I don't teach Ruth was a fucking Israelite. It says a Moabite. That's what it says.
Here's what I'm saying. She's inside Christ's lineage, and you're saying she's a heathen.
The heathen that couldn't come into the lineage or congregation.
In the first place.
10th generation or forever, basically.
Right, I want to deal with that too, or respond to that.
Yeah, that was the question.
The congregation.
Right, that was the case.
Gotcha.
Right.
So it says that a bastard, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. So what we will have to do is quantify congregation.
You need to go around the world, use sorcery. Around the world, use sorcery. You said, I'll go with you and serve your gods. Why the fuck I'm an Israelite and I'm saying I'm gonna serve your God, but we got the same God? Why would I talk like that?
You getting off the point, and you're not going directly to what I'm saying here. You understand? Obviously, like this is based on, you understand, there was tons of people who weren't allowed to come inside the congregation. If you had a jacked up nose, you couldn't come inside the congregation, meaning you couldn't come to the temple. You couldn't come around our high holy days. It even talks about those that were mixed with Edomites and Egyptians, that they couldn't come in for 3 generations. So now, Moabites, who were never allowed to enter in, even in for 10 generations, you're telling me that once again, that this relation to this Moabite woman, not only did she come in the congregation, come back to the land of Israel, but then her descendants were able to become kings and the Messiah of Israel?
Solomon, he's the one that committed iniquity, right? Solomon, he's the one that dealt with all of the women of the nations and served their gods. And he had to get that punishment.
For these evil building projects of Solomon resulted not in the collapse of the Davidic house, but only in the loss of the north. The Davidites are not annihilated for the sin of Solomon the way the northern houses are for the sin of Jeroboam.
There's no account of King Solomon being punished for his sins to the point where he was beaten with the rod of men, with the stripes of the children of men.
We would have to examine all examples. So all the examples in the Bible of a heathen mother and an Israelite father would have to, what's the word? It would have to fit what you're saying, right? Because we see examples where there was kings and their mothers were heathens.
Immediately upon hearing that her son had died, Athaliah, the queen mother, decided to grab power for herself and gave orders to kill all the members of the royal family. Only Joash, her infant son, survived, hidden in a chamber of the temple by his aunt Jehosheba, a sister of Ahaziah and the wife of the high priest Jehoiada. During her 6-year rule, Athaliah promoted the cult of the Phoenician god Baal. This provoked the hate of the priesthood and the people, who saw her as a foreign usurper and the murderer of the royal Davidic line. Joash was 7 years old when the high priest Jehoiada successfully conspired with several army officers to dethrone Athaliah. Jehoiada proclaimed publicly in the temple that Joash was the legitimate king, placed a crown on the boy's head, and anointed him. Athaliah heard the crowd shouting, "Long live the king," and rushed to the temple, screaming, "Treason! Treason!" The guard seized her and killed her at the horse gate of the palace. The crowd assaulted the temple of Baal, killed Matan, the pagan high priest, and destroyed the building and the idols. Joash was 7 years old when rebels, led by Jehoiada and several army officers, proclaimed in the temple that he was the legitimate king. The high priest placed a crown on the boy's head and anointed him, while the crowd shouted, "Long live the king!" Among the mothers named in the Book of Kings, only Rehoboam's mother, Naamah the Ammonite, was not the right mother. According to Carmichael, the negative attitude toward union with foreigners was clearly expressed in the law forbidding mixed seed. Moreover, Solomon's marriage to foreign women are blamed for his apostasy and for YHWH's judgment to divide his kingdom. Carmichael, in speaking of Rehoboam, comments that it is a truly remarkable fact that this half-Israelite, half-Ammonite product is the only son attributed to Solomon. Thus, Solomon was accused of threatening David's house because he had planted a mixed seed on the throne.
Rehoboam would not have been able to rule if he was an Ammonite, because the law was the only people that can be a king of your people is someone of your people. They will have to prove their pedigree.
Those are Israelites. Now, look at those facial features of those Israelites. Look at the beards. Look at the beards. Look at the nostril features. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? Look at that. So you got the beard, you got the now. I'm gonna do something for y'all. I'm about to turn around to say y'all can look, and this is their side profile, right? This is their side profile. Go ahead. Now, when you see that, right? You can look up this. This is a relief. This is incarnate.
Cause it's looking like you in my black ass business for no motherfucking reason. I don't really know what you are ethnically, but it's looking like cracker. And I want you to stay your cracker ass out of my black ass business.
You by no means will enter through the gates of the city. You are not mine. You are not mine. Here's something else that you need to understand. In accordance with Dabarim, the 23rd chapter, the 3rd verse, it declares that no mamzer and no bastard will ever enter the assembly of Yasharal. A bastard meaning someone who is mixed with a mother of someone who has a mother or father as a Yasharalite and a pagan or Gentile opposite parent. If you are mixed, then you are a mamzer, you are a bastard, and you will by no means ever enter the assembly of Yasharal.
It's a mamzer, you're a bastard. You can't come to the congregation. Think. Now you're not even an Israelite. Damn. Nobody's Israelite. Oh, man. Are you a mamzer, babe? You got a white grandmother. 2 of them. Both sides, 2 white grandmothers. Damn, my baby's a mamzer.
This is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. It's important to understand in Hebraic thought, the word stranger, there's multiple words and definitions for stranger. There shall no stranger. Ben Nakar is the word. What does the word Ben mean? Ban, son, Nakar. What does that mean? Stranger, or sometimes it's translated as heathen. All right, let's take a look at the word Nakar. Foreign, alien, heathendom. You see the word right there? Hold on, I'm gonna highlight it. Wait for y'all to see that. Heathendom. Boom. There shall no son of the heathen eat thereof. Let's see where else this word Nakar is used. I think it's Isaiah 60 is what I'm looking for. It's like Isaiah 16, 14. Boom, watch this. Isaiah 60 and 10. And the sons of strangers, the Ben Nakar, shall build up your walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. What's that talking about? The heathen being what? Enslaved in the kingdom of heaven, right? The sons of strangers, the Ben Nakar, shall build up your walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. And it goes on to say, for the nation and kingdom that will not serve. That word Nakar right there is in reference to a non-Israelite.
The winner always gives the details of a story, just like Brother Yirmiyahu just talked about. He will give you the you know what happened in the account. It is his story. It's not true history, right? A lot of stuff you're seeing going on there, those are the writings of the people who won the war.
The following section investigates redactional research on the growth of Isaiah 56-66. It will become clear that redaction criticism substantiates the viewpoint held here that a change took place in the concept of identity.
When you read the account in the New Testament and it speaks of the Messiah's own people turning on him and rejecting him, like I said before, this ain't accurate.
They say, we're not illegitimate children. The only father we have is God himself. No, on the one hand, it's defensive. Jesus was saying, listen, I mean, Abraham's not your father. And they're saying, we're not, we're the legitimate children of Abraham.
Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me. For I came from God and now am here. I have not come on my own, but he sent me. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to your father.
Jesus was not one of these people, nor were the apostles who walked with him.
And you want to carry out your father's desire. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies.
We must understand that Jesus actually rebuked and he rebuffed those people.
Yet because I tell the truth, you do not believe.
Now, remember when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees told Jesus, we have never been to bondage to any man. We are the seed of Abraham. They said, we have never been in bondage.
You mean you ain't never been in bondage? And if you saying you ain't never been in bondage, you saying you ain't no Israelite, but you a Pharisee, so you must be an Edomite, a Herodian.
So he can't be talking about them. Remember they told Jesus we ain't never been in bondage? So he ain't talking about them. And this is after the Babylonian captivity.
Because the tribe of Judah was taken into captivity in 585 BC by Babylon.
Come on, can y'all handle what I'm trying to teach y'all? Come on, black folk, get your head up. Remember they went into Babylon first. Now they had been taken by the Syrians into Babylon, right? So they was in captivity, right? But remember, when Jesus came and talked to the Pharisees after the Babylonian captivity, they said, we have never been in bondage. So if we have never been in bondage, Jesus wasn't talking to them people. Then was the Edomites that had took over. Is this too much?
Now, look, I'm going to turn sideways for y'all. And then I'm going to hold them back up. Look at that. Look at that. Now watch this.
Remember, he had a gang of concubines. He said, but they had Chemosh or Chemosh. You had Zidon. You had Milcom. You had Ashtoreth. He said, man, he built altars for all these idols, and I told him not to do it.
This is the wisest man on earth. Look what he has done. He knows the law, but he's married all these women, which was against the law. And then he brought their gods into the land, defiling the land. The wisest man on earth.
It said, thou didst bow thy loins unto women. What does that mean? He bowed his loins unto women. He had to have it. Remember that show, remember Spike Lee movie, She Got to Have It? Right. King Solomon had to have it. He loved women. That was his vice, wisdom and women.
But look at what Slow-Mo's doing here. He's bringing all these women. Now, he got these women, but I'm pretty sure they were by a contract as a seal, an agreement between kings not to attack one another. So the women that he got were part of a package deal. They signed agreements with that Slow-Mo would not make war with any of these kings.
You know what that cut? When people say Deuteronomy 7:3 was all the time about the African nations and the Canaanites. That cut that. Right. Now, he was talking about Moab too. And Ammon and Esau. Go ahead.
But when you read the rest of the story of King Slow-Mo, Slow-Mo didn't have but one son and two daughters. After all these women, one son and two daughters.
Wow. Solomon, even in his wisdom, he went into madness and folly. These women caused him to fall. The Lord told him, don't do it. They gonna.
Since Solomon wanted to be wicked, guess what? The kingdom's gonna split.
So the base level reason for why we even had a split to begin with was because of idolatry, right?
The Bible says Solomon did what was displeasing to the Lord by tolerating and even promoting pagan worship. The prophet Ahijah told him that his sinfulness would cost his offspring inheritance of the land of Israel. Argued from Deuteronomy 7:1-5 that it was so great a sin to marry a heathen wife, that the penalty of destruction was attached to it.
Solomon, he's the one that committed iniquity, right? Solomon, he's the one that dealt with all of the women of the nations and served their gods. And he had to get that punishment.
Deuteronomy informs us at critical junctures when Solomon sins, when 3 consecutive Davidites do evil, and in the midst of reigns of 2 Davidites who act like the house of Ahab that YHWH, because of David, had given the Davidites a fief forever.
Read. Thou didst stain thy honor.
He was a stain in his honor, because even when you talk about the greatness of Solomon, what people always bring up, yeah, but he fell off though. People, because he was great.
If Jehoram's marriage to Athaliah is deemed unholy, how much more Solomon's marriage to an Ammonitess and an Egyptian? Rehoboam was the fruit of that unholy marriage, but that did not disqualify him from inheriting Solomon's throne or debar him from Matthew's list.
What is that, guys? What does that look like to y'all? What sculpture of what race of people? Hope y'all can see it. What sculpture of what race of people does that look like to y'all? Look at that. I'm gonna put my camera down a little bit. What race of people does that look like to y'all? That looks like an African. Look at the head. You know how they got them little tiny heads? You see that? You see the tiny heads they got? Now, look, look, and this is a Canaanite. When you get into this book, this is a sculpture of a Canaanite. Now, when you look at me, my facial features are totally different than the facial features of this Canaanite. But this Canaanite, look, you see the sunken in eyes? But now look at me. Do I look like that? I got the long nose. I got the long facial chin, all of that. Look at that. But do I look like that Canaanite? Absolutely. Now let me show y'all another one. Look.
What is it that bothers my beautiful princess? Tell your father and I will solve the matter immediately.
Father, Uben people have started again. They banned Mbadike, my betrothed, from seeing me. They said we are slaves. What? That we cannot marry.
What? What are you doing in my personal house? What are you doing there? What are you doing in my personal house? You see me, you're asking me. Who brought you there? Eh?
This is my land now.
Your land? Yes. Are you dreaming? Are you just in a dream?
It's my land.
How is it your land?
The Igwe has allocated this land to me.
She won't work in us. She won't work in. You waited what?
Yes.
Somebody's parcel of land given to you on that platter? You're stupid.
The Igwe allocated this land so that I will clear it and plant palm trees. And you know this place is so fine for palm plantation.
How can you Osu enter my parcel of land? That's what I'm asking. You are Osu, Igbo Osu, an outcast. What brought you into the land of a son of the soil?
Let me ask you. When you called me Osu, that's what you are inside of me. But I want to ask you a question.
Let me answer you.
The slave I am.
That's what you are. Don't argue it. Don't debate it.
From my lineage, we have produced the Igwe of this land. It is also from the same lineage of the slaves that the gods of this land have chosen as them more. At the last count, I have discovered that the Osu, the slaves Those are in charge of this life. Now you tell me, who is the slave?
Just because they found the staff of an shrine when my father, the late king, died, they took over rulership of this kingdom. They took over my birthright. Gods of our land, why did you allow this? Why did you decide to cheat me? It's a shameful thing that outcasts, Osu people, are now ruling this great kingdom. It is time I took over. Yes, I have to revolt now, or watch this big kingdom taken over until I die.
They try to say I'm black too. I am not black, honey. I'm not black, I'm just Dominican. I am not mixed. If I was mixed, bro, my parents, either one of them would be so-called black, they want to call them black. One of them would be black, one of them would be Dominican. Boom, I'm black and Dominican. No, shorty, what people be doing is they try to get like information from the back time, the old days, and try to say Dominicans came from this piece of shit, so that makes you black.
Look at this nonsensical, ignorant nincompoop. You want to get information from the back time.
Right, so let us build with you. We worship a God like you do. That's Sardan, Assyrian king. Nope, that's Sardan. Go ahead.
But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, Ye have nothing to do with us.
We said we don't want nothing to do with you other nations. We got this. We don't need no help, no Rainbow Coalition. We're good. No BLM. We're good. We're going to do this on our own. Go ahead.
To build an house unto our God.
That you have nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with us. Now we're all God's chosen people. We're all God's people. He said, nah, nothing to do with us. Go ahead.
But we ourselves.
Go ahead.
Together.
Go ahead.
Will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us.
Let's see if the heathen say, okay, we understand. We're sorry for bothering you. Leave them alone. Let them build in peace. Watch the next verse.
Then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building.
That sounds so familiar.
The first 6 chapters tell the story of the return to Judah and Jerusalem and of the rebuilding of the temple there, but they also tell of a squabble between the returnees and a second group of people, perhaps Samaritans. Ezra 4. Having been excluded from participating in the building of the temple, this second group writes a complaint to the Persian king Artaxerxes about the returnees. That king then puts a stop to the building process, which lasts until the reign of Darius.
So this is 1 Kings chapter 14 and verse 21. It says, and Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Now we know Solomon had a lot of heathen women. We know Solomon had a lot of wives, right? A lot of concubines, right? It says, and Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. And after Solomon ruled, his son came into power as king of Judah, right? Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel, to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. So we see right there that King Rehoboam was with he had a mother, right? His mother was an Ammonitess. You see what I'm saying? One of Solomon's concubines was an Ammonite, right? But yet Rehoboam was still the king of Judah. So you mean to tell me he couldn't come into the congregation of the Lord and he was the king of Judah? Come on, man.
Son of David was Solomon. But this is telling you that Joseph was of the lineage of David, which is essential because Christ had to come from the lineage of David. Is what I say. Yes, so without that, you understand, he couldn't be the king of Israel. You understand? The king of Israel had to come from the lineage of David. You understand? And Mary was not of the lineage of David. As a matter of fact, them not count it after the woman. They count after the man because the man carried the seed.
Okay. John 6:42 says, and they said, is this not Yeshua, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How is it then that he saith, I came down from heaven? So they understood that Yeshua was the son of Joseph, the son of Mary. Now, in understanding the Bible and understanding the genealogy, wasn't there a curse put on the kings of Judah? And with said curse, how would Yeshua come from the lineage of kings if in fact there was a curse on the lineage of kings? Just to see what you are may know or may not know, can somebody answer that question?
We'll see. No more sit upon the throne. So that line can't sit upon the throne anymore. So it got to be Mary's line. That's what they do. It got to be the woman's line. No.
Yes. The question was, there was a curse that was placed on the kings of Israel.
So sitting upon the throne anymore because they were going to be in captivity.
So of course, when we went into Babylonian captivity, there were no more kings after that. So how can Yeshua come from a lineage of kings?
Once the captivity ends, they can sit upon the throne again. It's not a forever thing. Luke 21.
Okay, so how is the lineage of Yeshua through David if the kings of Judah were cursed and there were no kings? No king would have the throne.
Joachim and Jachin, and how the Messiah derives from that line through his father, his physical father. Okay.
Now the answer comes from Jonias, and Jonias is mentioned in the lineage of Yeshua in Matthew 1, but he's also referred to as someone else, and that name is Coniah.
Zerubbabel came out of that line and they built the temple. Okay.
Lineage of Yeshua through Matthew 1 and Luke 3, and there's a very good reason why we need to understand the genealogy. Jeremiah
22, 24.
Jeremiah 22, verse 24.
So, how can this be fulfilled? And how can Yeshua come from the lineage of David? Because it clearly states no more coming through the seed. None of his children went to rule, for no more children are ruling from the throne of David. So this particular curse was fulfilled.
Is this man, Coniah, a despised, broken idol? Is he a vessel wherein is no pleasure?
Yes, he was. Go ahead. He was wicked. Go ahead.
Wherefore are they cast out? He and his seed.
Wherefore are they cast out? He and his seed. Go ahead.
And are cast into a land which they know not.
Go ahead.
O earth, 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 hear the word of the Lord.
Earth means man. Go ahead.
Thus saith the Lord, write ye this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days.
Why is he written childless? Read on.
For no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David and ruling any more in Judah.
Was fulfilled. So how could Yeshua, a descendant of David, qualify to rule over the throne if in fact that his seed not Yeshua's seed, but the seed of David would no longer sit on the throne. How can that be possible?
So this verse is used because they're saying, see, this line is cursed. This line can never ever sit upon the throne of David. So therefore the Messiah cannot come out of this line. That's what they're saying. That's not what that means.
There's a contradiction because it says that in Matthew 1:16 that Joseph was Jacob's father. How can Joseph have two fathers?
You know, it's a little, when you read the both genealogies, it kind of says something similar. You know, so that's what Deacon Iton trying to explain to you all today.
Right.
All right?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so let me see. So we know that King David had wives, had multiple wives. So the kingship came down through Solomon. And was that the side that was cursed?
Yes.
But let's talk about this. Yeshua didn't come from the king's side of Solomon. He came from Nathan, who was Joseph. He was Solomon's brother. But what I'm trying to say,
Because you almost got it.
Yeah, right.
You kind of said something that's not right, but you almost got it.
Nathan is Miriam's father, right?
No, Nathan is not Miriam's father.
Nathan is Joseph's father.
No, Nathan is not Joseph's father.
Well, whose father is he? Who's Joseph's father?
Joseph's father is Jacob, and his father-in-law is Heli.
What to do is use this on that Negro only Jake, Negro only sister, whoever believes in it. Use these precepts, cut them to shreds. See how they try to dance around it. See how they try to, it's no wiggling your way up out of it, man. You gonna get put to death right along.
Athaliah's descendants are blotted out of the book of life by being blotted out of the Messiah's pedigree. Likewise, good is visited upon the children to the third and fourth generation. Hence Jehu's descendants to the fourth generation are made kings over Israel. J.W. Bergen remarks that they are omitted because they were the result of an unholy marriage of Jehoram with Athaliah, the daughter of the wicked Ahab and idolatrous Jezebel, and Uzziah, the daughter of Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok the priest, as the first name becomes restored to the line of our Lord's ancestors. J. H. A. Ebrard, 1863, 152, argued from Deuteronomy 7:1-5 that it was so great a sin to marry a heathen wife, that the penalty of destruction was attached to it. YHWHs, a God merciful and gracious, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin, but who does not remit punishment, bring punishment for the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons and the sons of sons and upon the third and fourth generations.
Now, some of the leaven that is out there with some of these groups like FOPI, for instance, I'll just use them as an example, for our people's entertainment Israelites. When you go to them, they say that they're going to have a Negro-only Passover. First of all, Negroes are scriptures. There are no Negro sons of Israel. All right, so for you to say you're going to have a Negro Passover, that's old leaven, thinking that all the tribes are dark skinned, all right, or have to look like Negroes. All right, that makes absolutely no sense.
Jesus' family line, in terms of as a dynasty, was the Hasmonean dynasty at the time. And their symbol of their household was a panther, a black panther. So it was a very popular symbol in the ancient world. So you might say there was a Black Panther party even at that time and in that place. Would you go by that symbology?
I hope y'all still up. I hope this is a crash course in the Maccabees. If you never read it, hey God, you getting the meat, hey God, of it right now. So when you go back and read it, you're going to have a little more understanding of it.
So what begins to happen is this. A group of men stand up. These men are called the
A Black Panther. So it was a very popular symbol in the ancient world. So you might say there was a Black Panther party even at that time and in that place. Would you go by that symbology?
I hope y'all still up. I hope this is a crash course in the Maccabees. If you never read it, hey God, you getting the meat, hey God, of it right now. So when you go back and read it, you're going to have a little more understanding of it.
So what begins to happen is this. A group of men stand up. These men are called the Maccabees. Okay? Levitical priests, right? Who came back in 1791, right? But they rose up on behalf of Israel, and they established a high priesthood in Israel, where what happened is, when there's not a king on the throne in Israel, the high priest is who the authoritarian of Israel is. They established this high priesthood, this succession of high priests, starting with Matthias Maccabee, Judas Maccabee, etc., who would rule Israel, right? That's called, in history, the Hasmonean dynasty.
In the next generation, resistance escalated throughout the reign of Alexander Jannaeus. His own people were rebellious against him, for at a festival which was then being celebrated, when he stood upon the altar, and was going to sacrifice, the nation rose upon him, and pelted him with citrons, which they had in their hands. They also reviled him, as derived from a captive, and so unworthy of his dignity and of sacrifice. Alexander Jannaeus was said to be the son of a captive woman and therefore unfit for assuming priestly functions. A similar story appears in Kid 66, in which the Pharisees ask Alexander Jannaeus to give up the high priesthood to the seed of Aaron and keep to himself the royal crown. Here instead the question of priestly descent plays an important role. Further, in Antiques 13 372-373 Josephus reports a story of Jannaeus' sacrifice on the Feast of Tabernacles, during which people, in protest, begin throwing citrons at him, for they considered Jannaeus to have no such dignity. The sedition was punished and ended with the slaying of about 6,000 of the protesters, while the inner temple area reserved for the priests was encircled with a wooden wall. Peace with the Pharisees arrived after Jannaeus died. This occurred when his wife Shalamshan Alexandra assumed the royal power, whereas she reserved the right to appoint as high priest her elder son Hyrcanus. Subsequent conflict under Hasmonean rule is also to be attributed to inter-ethnic struggles within the League of Iudaioi. Smith proposes that Alexander Jannaeus was rejected by Judean Iudaioi, but maintained power with the support of other members of the political league. On his deathbed, Alexander Jannaeus, who had faced revolt from many quarters of the population, counseled his wife and successor, Shalom Alexandra, to befriend the Pharisees, because these men have so much influence with their fellow Jews that they can injure those whom they hate and help those to whom they are friendly, for they have the complete confidence of the masses. Alexandra heeded his advice and gave the Pharisees free rein. They killed many of their opponents.
We're not black Hebrew Israelites. There's no such thing as the scriptures don't call us a black Hebrew Israelites. Okay, we're just Israelites. We're just Israelites. That's what we are. We're not black Hebrew Israelites, because Mexicans are Israelites, right? There's some people in the Mexican culture that are Israelites.
This is the reason why the Mashiach was never immersed by any of those clowns, okay, up there in Jerusalem, amongst the Pharisees or the Sadducees, because that was not the legitimate priesthood.
Guatemalan, Puerto Ricans who are Israelites. So it's just not black Israelites. No, we're not black Hebrew Israelites, because Mexicans are Israelites, right? There's some people in the Mexican culture that are Israelites.
Anticipation of restored control of the Jerusalem temple. Still, the Qumran community did not reject the theological validity of the sacrificial cult or its centralization in Jerusalem. They simply rejected the contemporary administration of the cult. The community hoped that they would regain control of Jerusalem temple and reinstitute the proper cultic practice in accordance with their sectarian rulings. The War Scroll and Temple Scroll speak of a day when the community's priests will control the temple.
Even if you look in the Qumran community, is to reach out to the elect. When Yeshua was talking about the elect, he's going to gather the elect and all that. The same thing was being said in Qumran. But the only difference is they believe the elect was just those people that were there. John is the one that brought it out to all of Israel to say, okay, now anybody wants to come to the Most High, who's Israel. He took what they were doing there and he opened it up. So that was something that was very interesting. So we see a modification of what was done at Qumran through what was being taught in what we call the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament.
Because people want to kill us, right? He wants to kill us because we're teaching Hispanic people and mixed people that they're Israelites.
The Zadokite poet composer of the Psalms of Solomon calling for the sounding of the trumpet was meant to trigger the collective memory of 2 Chronicles 13 and the well-known story of how the legitimate priests of Judah sounded the trumpet of war and defeated illegitimate priests of Israel. The legitimate priests were the heroes of the story, which recounted how the Davidic monarchy was preserved. The sounding of the trumpet by legitimate priests of the Lord put in motion the god of war waging war against a superior military force that had already sandwiched them in a superior military maneuver with a superior military force. The legitimate priests brought about the victory in warfare because God fought for them. Thus, the trumpet functions as a key signifier which triggers collective memory of the readers, reciters, of the liturgical poetic masterpiece. The key signifier of the trumpet would not merely trigger the collective memory of the battle which the legitimate priests led with their trumpet blowing, but it would again double trigger, the readers, reciters, to action. Zadokite priests and their supporters should ready themselves for eschatological warfare because God would wage war for them. They should ready themselves. The fact the key signifier of the trumpet worked is evident in the textual propagation of warfare language and apocalypticism. In fact, many of the biblical commentaries, Pesharim, are the most aggressive and violent texts from Qumran. This proves that the Zadokite Qumran community perceived violence and warfare as consistent with the workings of God in history, especially as they pertained to their own personal lives and their community. Although Zadokites had been kicked out of Jerusalem and their power positions in the Jerusalem temple by the Hasmoneans, the Zadokites continued to assert their influence over the Jewish populace not only in Eretz Israel, but also in the diaspora. Furthermore, the Zadokite influence was so strong that it can be seen as providing the central influence for the Jesus movement. As Israel Nall of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem writes, we are now able to grasp the struggle that waged in Jesus' soul between his natural desire to live and the messianic vocation of rejection, suffering, and death, which he had inherited from his predecessor, the suffering servant of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The suffering servant of the Dead Sea Scroll is the teacher of righteousness, who is a Zadokite priest expelled from the Jerusalem temple. This teacher of righteousness was instrumental in building the Qumran community.
The Messiah was at war with the priesthood. He wasn't in agreement with them. No. That the prophets was at war with the priesthood. They weren't in agreement with them. You mad because I'm pointing out the obvious fact. There's conflict in what you read.
When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem.
And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem.
Strong's G 2453, Eudias.
As noted previously, in the Maccabean literature the Israelites themselves can be called an ethos, yet ethne in the plural can describe those who are to be put out of the country, Cheres, and replaced by the Judean men, Andros Iodias, to preserve ethnic purity.
No, the Hasmoneans forced conversion.
In their land?
Don't matter where it is. Forced conversion is forced conversion.
at the time of actual Judeans, people from the house of King David living in the land, there was Roman and Greek converts at the same time as well. So there was no hijacking of anything, but there was this thing called halacha, or the Torah, which is very clear to allow converts, people graft themselves in. And not only does the Torah allow you to graft yourself in, it says you can't even separate or differentiate between a man who grafts himself in. He's called Israel. He gets the inheritance of Israel put on him. So the Torah is so specific to not differentiate between a human who is of the bloodline of Israel and who's not of the bloodline of Israel as being part of the house of Israel.
The term Iudaeus has generated much analysis. Originally used as an outsider's description of Israelites, often in a neutral, descriptive sense, some Israelites began to use Iudaeus for themselves in expressions such as the ethnos of the Iudaean, or simply the Iudaeoi. Hansen and Oakman list 5 nuances of Iudaeus in the period under consideration: those who professed allegiance to the state religion of Judea, including converts.
I made a differentiation between ancient Israelites and Judeans, and it's very with Rabbi Harry. We can pull up your discussion, your admonition to your audience to distinguish between Israelites and Judeans.
However, a fifth usage, namely, his literary aside to his reader that the story of the theft of Jesus' body has been spread among the Iudaeoi to this day, is in a different category. Some scholars have argued that this verse shows that the author was not an Iudaeus, but that argument seems to have lost favor, if not held. The reference is to Israelites. Either way, the reference is ethnic. The term Iudaeoi is not found in Barnabas, and references to Israel are mostly to the ancient past or to Jesus' ministry, but the language of us, autoi versus them, ekinoi, along with other contrasting pronouns pervades the epistle. Jefford is convinced that the author was a Judean.
But the nucleus, the genetics traces a nucleus, a minuscule nucleus of ancestry from the Middle East. Those are the Judeans. They are different from the Black Israelites.
Finally, some take the juxtaposition of the story about the report of the guards at Jesus' tomb to the chief priests, with the Great Commission, as evidence of a largely Gentile-leaning Matthean. Ecclesia. The former pericope concludes with a statement about the Jews still circulating to this day, the story concocted by the chief priests about the disciples taking the body of Jesus. Far from moving in the direction of Gentile supersession, the pericope rather suggests close proximity between the Matthean community and non-believing Jews, and ultimately directs its criticism not at the Jews en masse, but at their leaders. None of these cases, in the end, envisages a Gentile replacement of the Jews as Jesus' people.
And I'm going to say again, and please recall, I said this, that I distinguish between 3 entities: Israelites, Judeans, and the children of Israel.
Third, Pilate claims that he is innocent of the blood of Jesus, in contrast to the people, Holaus, who say, "His blood be on us and our children." As an example of the latter, she briefly cites the self-understanding reflected in the epistle of Barnabas of being a people, Laos, and the true heir.
The Judeans. And by Judeans, what do I mean, Judean? I know that the population of Judea, by the time the Assyrians invaded the land, it was heterogeneous.
Paul's apparent associated of covenant privileges with ethnic Israel as a whole. A similar intention would appear to be behind Jesus' telling of the parable of the vineyard. When Jesus asks his listeners what the owner of the vineyard will do to the tenants, they, like David, unknowingly convict themselves. He will put those wretches to a miserable death, and let out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the fruits in their seasons. Even though the Pharisees do not come to the realization that their status avails them nothing, they at least recognize that the parable is intended to rebuke them. They perceived that he was speaking about them.
Matthew 23:31. It says, "Wherefore you be witnesses unto yourselves, that you are the children of them which killed the prophets."
Our people, right, are the proof that they are the offspring of the prophet killers. Right? Read on.
Fill you up then the measure of your fathers.
You
serpents, ye generation of vipers.
That's these people. A serpent in a generation of vipers. Read.
How can you escape the damnation of hell?
These brothers are going to get their judgment. These sisters, these people are going to get their judgment.
Matthew 23:33 bears very great similarity also to Matthew 37. The major difference being that whereas in 23:33 the generation of vipers is asked, how will you escape the judgment of Gehenna? In 3:7 it is asked, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? It is perhaps also important to note that 3:7 immediately precedes a pericope which has specifically to do with the worthlessness of Abrahamic descent. God is able to raise children of Abraham from the stones. Already the axe has been laid at the root of the tree, and all those who do not bear fruit will be thrown into the fire.
So what I want to go into now is your fruit.
Many interpreters have too quickly equated the other people in several Matthean passages with the largely Gentile Ecclesia. John the Baptist warns the Pharisees and Sadducees not to count on their status as children of Abraham in order to avert judgment. Produce fruit worthy of repentance. Do not think to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father, for I tell you, God is able from these stones to raise up children for Abraham. But now the axe is lying at the root of the trees. Every tree therefore that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the re.
What is also important for us to understand now is that who were actually running the synagogues. And the ones that were running the synagogues in Jerusalem now were Pharisees.
Not only does Jesus know the thoughts of his opponents, he also knows their future, which is in principle unavailable to the conscious awareness of the other characters. For example, when Jesus finishes telling the parable of the vineyard, he declares to the chief priests and Pharisees that the kingdom of God will be taken from them and given to a nation producing the requisite fruit.
We're supposed to bring forth fruit, but righteous fruit. So let's look at this in a few places. Not mixed fruit. Some people want a kiwi and a lime all mixed together, or banana and a kiwi, all this mixed fruit. That's the Father wants you to bring forth righteous fruit.
Matthew 21:43 has a very distinctive use of the term ethnos, one that is not found in the other canonical Gospels or elsewhere in Matthew. Therefore I tell you, plural, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you, plural, and given to an ethnos producing the fruits of it. Us, the plural you and therefore I tell you appears to refer back to the chief priests and the elders of the people in the temple. This group seems to be implied by the you plural that introduces the two sons, as well, and by the repetition of you plural in the two sons interpretation that tax collectors and prostitutes will enter into the kingdom before you. One would therefore think that the you being replaced by the fruit-bearing ethnos has been clearly identified, the chief priests and elders of the people.
A judgment is coming to these Negroes. All right? A judgment is coming. A judgment is coming to that of those who killed the prophets. Right? A horrible judgment. Right? Read on.
God rejects Israel's leaders. The kingdom has been taken away from them and given to a nation, ethn, producing the fruits of it. Is it possible that the special use of the term ethnos for priestly associations triggered the Matthean special use here? If so, he considered, the leaders of his group to be an ethnos voluntary association in opposition to the priestly leaders as an ethnos, with whom he has also linked his main opponents, the Pharisees, as an ethnos. I do not apologize for this, for I have good precedents. John the Baptist, and Christ after he, called the Pharisees the offspring of vipers. The scribes had also won popular esteem for their zealous efforts to win foreigners and uncircumcised to the Jewish faith. If their tricks and other devices had thrown the wool over someone's eyes, they got a marvelous reception for their so-called increase to the church. Christ, on the contrary, declares that their enthusiasm is so far from laudable that it increasingly calls down God's vengeance, since they pull down to greater destruction any who join their sect. Note how corrupt their condition was, how dissipated their religion. To bring disciples to God would surely have been a holy and splendid thing, yet to attract Gentiles to the Jewish worship of those days, so degraded, so chock full of wicked profanity, was nothing but leading them from Scylla to Charybdis.
When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts he found men selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple area, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves he said, "Get these out of here. How dare you turn my father's house into a market?"
Yeah, right. So that's my rebuttal to this. Yeah, right. And if you don't know why I'm saying yeah, right, you got to really understand what would just happen. So he allegedly went into the temple, right? Remember, the people. First off, remember, it was just said in verse 10. Who is this? That's what the people of Jerusalem is saying. It says all the city was moved. Like, okay, he coming with this multitude, but who is he? They don't know who he is.
What have we done to deserve such a fate? For heaven's sake. What's wrong? Gamaliel, must he be late on a day like this? But it's not his nature to be late. Well, this is not a day to start. But the Roman soldiers are everywhere. Maybe we should consider his safety first. I'm sure he's safe. It's just that Isaiah prophesied that the Messiah would come during these times. Why won't the other rabbis just accept that? Do you believe that this dark-skinned Nazarene is really him? I don't know, Nicodemus. But one thing I am sure of. If this Yeshua is indeed the Messiah, I fear we may be too late.
Then he runs up in the temple and starts beating people and flipping tables. And it says, when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children and the children crying in the temple saying, "Hosanna, son of David," no, the chief priest would have had a great indignation towards him for what he just did. If you felt as though there was something wrong going on in this temple, if you felt what we were doing is wrong, the correct answer isn't to start attacking your own people in the temple.
His disciples remembered that it is written, "Zeal for your house will consume me."
And he said unto them, "It is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer."
He said, my house shall be called what?
The house
of
prayer.
prayer. But what was the description of his house when we read earlier? So what's wrong with this location? He says the house of unripe figs.
Like he said, don't make this house a den of thieves.
But when you look into the history, this is where the Sanhedrin and all of them dwell. You know, everything had to take place outside of the gate before you even entered in the city.
And then walked out like we know they're going to get you. They're going to get you not after that, during that.
I show how modern ethnicity studies can offer insights into ethnicity into Matthew, and in particular how priestly voluntary associations called ethn might help to interpret the special fruit bearing ethnos of Matthew 21:43 in terms of an alternative leadership to the priests of Jerusalem.
But what was the condition of the Sanhedrin all during that time? What's the condition of the Pharisees during that time? Are they a righteous people?
They're not going to allow anybody to come up in the place where they know the Creator has placed His name and do any type of violence or do anything like this. This is not going to happen, especially we don't know who you are. You're not about to just run up in here and start flipping stuff and beating people. That's not about to happen.
But some of them weren't even Israelites. Because remember, the Herodians, you know, they had made their way over into the priesthood and everything. Right. You remember Herod was an Edomite. Right. But, you know, he petitioned and everything to what? He was eventually made king of the Yahudim.
The blind and the lame, after he beat up people in the temple and them tables and stuff are flipped over and there's money everywhere and the doves are probably flying around, people trying to catch him because of the hell he just raised in this temple, right? Then after that, the blind and the lame just come in and he just heals them. Like everything goes back to normal. Once again, this is a man they don't know. They don't know him. They don't know. They're not going to let you come in here and just beat people up and then you just sit down and start healing. That's, people got to understand. Like it don't make, this narrative doesn't make sense. It is not logical.
Because remember now, when the Mashiach also went, he did another venture. Let's use that word, venture. He saw a man by the name of Nathaniel. Mm-hmm. Where did the Mashiach find Nathaniel? Sitting under a fig tree. And when he saw him sitting under a fig tree, what was the response that the Father or the Mashiach made to Nathaniel when he saw him under the fig tree? He said, behold, an Israelite indeed. He found him under a fig tree. The Father is speaking to us in agricultural terms. He found a man under a fig tree and he was ripe. So the next harvest that we're supposed to be giving to the Father is the first fruits from the vine. Okay, it's called the ingathering. And so when we begin to understand how the body works and how this now points the arrow towards Israel, is that the Father now is going to do his picking now, taken now from the very best of the harvest. Okay, we live on the earth and we're supposed to now be producing now good fruit.
But little noted significance, in view of the frequent attempts to attribute the replacement theme of the parable of the tenants to the early church, is Moses' argument before God after the incident with the golden calf. Therefore, if you do not have mercy on your vine, all things, Lord, have been done in vain, and you will not have anyone to glorify you. For even if you plant another vine, this one will not trust you, because you have destroyed the former one. In Matthew, both John and Jesus level a genetic insult against their Pharisaic interlocutors. When John saw crowds of Pharisees and Sadducees approaching him for baptism, he declared to them, "Brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the impending wrath? Brood of vipers, how can you speak what is good, since you are evil? For the mouth just speaks whatever fills the heart. Serpents, brood of vipers, how will you flee from the sentence of Gehenna?"
So now can you see why he said, I call them the house of unripe figs?
In conjunction with that, Ezekiel 7 verse 21. However, in this instance, there was no Esau. It was just niggas. Excuse my language. That's all it was. Ezekiel 7 verse 21.
Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 21. And I will give it into the hands of the strangers. The it is our land into the hand of strangers. Watch this. For a prey into the wicked of the earth. Who's that? That's Edom. I'm going to give your land to the white man for your evils you're doing on your own. Go ahead. For a spoil. And they shall pollute it. And they do. Go ahead. My face will I turn also from them. Let them kill you. Go ahead. And they shall pollute my secret place. For the robbers shall enter into it and defile it.
The temple profaned. And I will give it into the hands of the strangers for a prey, and to the wicked of the earth for a spoil, and they shall pollute it.
Strong's H2114. Zur.
The temple profaned. And I will give it into the hands of the strangers for a prey, and to the wicked of the earth for a spoil, and they shall pollute it.
Sicarii, Gorilla Hebrew, and then Gorilla Hebrew's a young man also. All right, I don't think he's 30 years old. 28 years old. So he's leading a camp. So with the Most High, yeah, it's not about age with the Most High. It's about the spirit. Done? So that's the spirit of the Howard Shot, right?
Bitch, light-skinned, mulatto-looking ass, bald-head, pencil-head motherfucker, milk dud-looking bitch.
When Yeshua was talking about the elect, he's going to gather the elect and all, the same thing was being said in Qumran. But the only difference is they believe the elect was just those people that were there. John is the one that brought it out to all of Israel to say, okay, now anybody wants to come to the Most High who's Israel. He took what they were doing there and he opened it up.
You spoke about Paul persecuting the church. And we can't overlook this because he said that he persecuted the church. And what's striking about the verses that you just read in Galatians, the first chapter 13 and 14, is that Paul defined who or what the church is. The church was all Jews.
Exactly.
There was no Gentile in the church.
Hallelujah.
And it's right there, in the 13th verse. The church that Paul persecuted were Jews.
John the Baptist now, or John the Immerser, was a Zadokite.
And if Paul was going to pervert Christianity, we'd have an epistle of Paul to the Ethiopians, an epistle of Paul to the Egyptians, an epistle of Paul to the Hutus and the Tutsis.
Right.
We don't have that. There's no epistle of Paul to the Arabs. There's no epistle of Paul to the Babylonians.
Exactly.
There's no epistle of Paul to the Edomites.
Yeah, right.
Paul could have very easily perverted Christianity.
Right. And
the Paul bashers are just idiots for not seeing that.
And of course, in other books, Paul definitely says that the Edomites are vessels fit for destruction.
Of destruction,
yes.
right.
He does not include them among the Israelites.
And he doesn't include any nation that's non-Israelite.
Right. And
every one of those people Paul wrote an epistle to were dispersed Israelites.
Right.
What is baptism for? It's a rite of passage. And when you understand contemporary communities like the Qumran community, they break it down and they explain what it is. It's a mikvah. It's a rite of passage.
Again, the true Levites, the true leaders now were from the Qumran community, and John the Baptist now, or John the Immerser, was a Zadokite.
They, joined by the authorities who represent the people, challenge Jesus to justify his actions by citing the source of his authority. Jesus responds with a counter-question about who authorized John's baptism, and why they fail to answer adequately. Jesus declines to cite the source of his authority.
And Yahushua answered and said unto them, I also will ask you one thing, which, if you tell me, I and likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things.
Yahushua was so cold, they never could trip him up. They asked him a question, and he turned around and asked him another question. He said, if you tell me, then I'll tell you. All right, but let's continue. Go ahead.
Verse 25, the baptism of John, whence was it? From heaven or of men?
So that's the question that he asked him.
Why was he baptized? See, that's really important. Why was Yeshua baptized?
Robert L. Webb shows that the only known really close parallel to John's baptism is the initiation rite for a new member of the Qumran community. This document referred to a new covenant in the land of Damascus and to its members as sons of Zadok, hence Schechter dubbed it a Zadokite work. Later, it came to be known as the Damascus document or CD Cairo Damascus. Schechter observed that the annals of Jewish history contained no record of a sect agreeing in all points with the one depicted. When the first Dead Sea Scrolls were made public, however, it was immediately apparent that there was some relationship between them and the so-called Damascus document. The sons of Zadok also figure prominently in the Manual of Discipline or Community Rule, a figure called the Teacher of Righteousness, who played an authoritative role in the early history of the sect appears, both in the document and in the commentary on Habakkuk's, does one of his adversaries, the man of the lie. The relationship between the Damascus document and the Qumran scrolls was subsequently confirmed when fragments of the Damascus rule were found in Qumran Cave 4. After the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in what would eventually amount to 11 caves near the western shore of the Dead Sea, scholars soon recognized a connection between the Damascus document and those discoveries. Such a connection was indicated first by the occurrence in the biblical commentaries from Qumran of the nicknames Teacher of Righteousness and Spouter of Lies known hitherto only from the Damascus document. Secondly, a number of similarities in ideology, vocabulary, and organization were recognized. Finally, the discovery of ancient fragments of the Damascus document in caves 4, 5, and 6 of Qumran proved those scholars right who had argued that the medieval manuscripts were based on a much older original. Since the discovery of fragments of the Damascus document at Qumran, the document is universally taken as part of the Qumran library and studied in this context. The existence of fragments of the Damascus document at Qumran was taken to indicate, moreover, that the work had been composed by the community responsible for the Pesharim, a type of biblical commentary attested at Qumran, and other sectarian works. More recently, the place of the Damascus document at Qumran and its relationship to other Qumran texts have become subjects of scholarly debate.
Oh, he proclaims that he rules over the kingdom of heaven, a kingdom of dark-skinned Jews.
De Boer, page 94. He also sees that underlying the question of the Pharisees to the Baptist in JN 1.25, why then are you baptizing if you are neither the Messiah, nor Elijah, nor the prophet? Is the assumption that baptizing with water constituted a mark of messianic identity and legitimacy.
Dead Sea Scrolls had a form of messianism that is similar to what is taught in the Brit Hadashah, yet they did not subscribe to Yeshua. They just came to certain conclusions that we see fulfilled in the Brit Hadashah. Very interesting.
The Dead Sea Scrolls made available for the first time a corpus of literature in Hebrew and Aramaic from Judea around the turn of the era, from the time of Jesus of Nazareth. Much of the fascination that the scrolls have held for the general public has arisen from the possibility that they might contain information pertinent to the career of Jesus that had been hidden, or perhaps suppressed, for nearly 2,000 years. In the first decade or so after the discovery, scholarship on the scrolls was preoccupied with their relevance to the New Testament. The exclusion of scholars from the official editorial team undoubtedly contributed to the imbalance of scholarship in this period. But it was inevitable that there would be great interest in whatever light these texts might shed on the origins of what would become the dominant religion of the Western world.
Scholars have been wrong about Jewish spirituality and Judaism in general from the first century for so long, and what the scrolls have done for us is they allowed us an entry into the world of these authors of these scrolls.
As soon as the scrolls were discovered, a number of theories regarding their possible relationship to the New Testament and Christian origins gained rapid momentum. The discovery of an early Jewish library from the time of Jesus offered untold potential for reconstructing the origins of Christianity.
Do you believe that Yeshua's halakha reflected that of the Pharisees and thus rabbinic Judaism as they are supposed to be the forerunners?
Jesus and the Torah, the legal writings and rules among the scrolls, have opened a new window into controversies over the Torah during the time of Jesus. Like the men of Qumran, Jesus had his own approach to the Torah, one that brought him into conflict with other legal traditions in his own time, especially those of the scribes, Pharisees, and temple priests.
So what I would say is his halakha more aligns with the halakha that was established amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran community.
The scrolls have given scholars access to biblical manuscripts that are centuries older than the Masoretic text and have made us aware of previously unknown Jewish documents contemporary with the emerging Christian movement to date.
But a lot of it is derived from that community, right, by the Dead Sea Scroll. I mean, by the Dead Sea in the Qumran caves.
For the first time, writings of the land, time, and language of Jesus were available to modern study, yet precisely how the scrolls might benefit the study of Christian origins remained an open question that has invited a number of provocative claims about the scrolls and Christian origins.
Right, so you'll see a lot of similarities to. Matter of fact, in that lecture I did, the patriarchal priesthood in the Bible, I went side by side and showed you that and explained that.
This chapter introduces the present state of affairs on this important question. After summarizing an array of sensational responses that first attended the discovery of the scrolls, we will observe how Qumran has taught us more about the original context of John the Baptist and Jesus' approach to the Torah, and beliefs regarding messianism and the resurrection.
And what the scrolls have done for us is they allowed us an entry into the world of these authors of these scrolls.
Who wrote and/or published these documents? Why were they hidden in the wilderness caves? How are the scrolls related to the ancient complex at nearby Khirbet Qumran, and what was the nature and worldview of the community that lived there? What trends do Qumran and the scrolls reflect in the history of Jewish thought? What can they reveal about Christian origins, and how can they inform our understanding of the New Testament and the social world of late Second Temple Judaism?
I actually take New Testament texts and I compare them side by side with some of the writings from the Qumran.
Let's flesh this out. Okay, let's see. Oh man, they got some of the same traditions. Oh, what? Okay, this is lining up. This lining up. Okay, this lining up. All right. Okay, let's unpack this New Testament now with this data. Oh man, they referring to the same things that they talk about in Qumran and that they were doing in ancient times. What the heck is going on? Who's Israel? He took what they were doing there and he opened it up. So that was something that was very interesting. So we see a modification of what was done at Qumran through what was being taught in what we call the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament.
If you are curious about this, then keep watching. I think you're going to like this. And you might be surprised what you will see.